This show contains profanity, advice you should never follow, humor that you might not enjoy. The names have been changed to protect the guilty. Do not try this at home.
Greetings, yellow blazers, blue blazers, Bill Bryson lovers, Bill Bryson haters.
Hiker trash.
Hiker trash. Dog lovers.
Dog haters.
I'm just looking around the room.
I love lamp.
I love lamp. Welcome to the Pox and Puss podcast. My name is Pox Holiday, and sitting to my right is
Puss in Boots.
And today we're going to talk about those interesting conversations you have when you're confined to a tent and or shelter.
Yeah.
And maybe a little bit other stuff. Anyway, be right back. It was just right there, and I walked around the corner. Wham.
Wham.
All right, getting a little bit of a late start here because some of you saw my tweet. I just completely leveled a fucking Bloody Mary into my laptop.
Had you even had one sip yet?
I had like 2 or 3 sips.
Okay.
And it was good and spicy. And then I did I literally put a coaster down in between the mixing board, the headphones, and the laptop. And honestly, granted, the headphone amplifier probably would have been the best thing to die, but it didn't have nearly as much surface space as the keyboard section of my fucking laptop.
There's a lot to really seep into on a keyboard.
Yeah,
so obviously
it stayed on for a few minutes. And
so obviously that's where it landed.
Yeah,
I think it's interesting that you said we're getting a late start.
Yes.
As this is the earliest we have ever recorded.
Ever. I thought about that because Baltimore Jack was the earliest prior to this. Yeah. And that was at like 1.
It felt really weird to open a beer at 1 o'clock.
It did.
But not weird enough not to do it.
Yeah.
But here we are. We're in my living room.
At 10:42 in the a.m.
10:42 with brunch drinks. And I'm still in my jammies.
Yeah. And I literally look like I just finished mowing someone's lawn.
I like it.
Well, thank you. What I am interested to see is whether or not you're going to say my real name since it is on this shirt.
On the shirt. That's always a nice touch.
Yeah, it's a touch of class.
Like
some people wear names on their shirts from like Jim or, Hal.
Billville.
Billville. Yeah, exactly. I thought about that yesterday. I was in an Advanced Auto Parts and there was a guy and they wear red shirts there. And he had his name on it, and I was like, "Oh, please let it be built." No, it's just, but it was fucking awesome. His name was Fred. I'm like, if you're gonna have another name,
I have a bowling league shirt, with a name on it, and I bought it solely because the name on it was Dirk.
Ooh, Dirk.
And because I am a Boogie Nights super freak,
that's true.
That needed to happen.
Dirk and Lovely.
That could be the title too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Speaking of titles, so this upcoming week is my birthday.
Ooh, is it really?
Yeah, it's in a couple of days.
I'm a terrible co-host.
Don't worry about it. Trust me. I already missed yours this year.
That's
I know.
True. You did.
But no, this is one of those birthdays where I'm like, I think 32 for me was one where I was like, oh God, 32. That's a nowhere birthday,
Yeah.
Like 31's pretty bad, but like you just got over 30, and then 32 was like, ooh. But about 2 weeks ago, I was told by a coworker, he heard me say something about the 90s, and he's a young guy, and he said, "Wait, how old are you?" And I hadn't done this in years, but I was like, "How old do you think I am?" And he was like, 26. And I was like, cool. And it's so weird because the day before, my wife and I had a discussion about how old we feel. And I told her that I felt like I was 26. And it was like, oh, well, cool. Confirmation.
All right.
Yeah, confirmation.
All right. For the win.
But getting back to the birthday thing. So last night went out to eat in Raleigh. And there's a place called The Pit. It's made it onto a couple of...
Which sounds like a really classy joint when you say, we're going down to the pit.
To the pit.
But in reality...
It's Fancy Pants.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Fancy Pants Barbecue. The guy on the show excuse me, the guy that runs it, he was on the Throwdown with Bobby Flay show, and he won. He actually, they brought some guy from New York in to try and make, Eastern Carolina barbecue.
No, that's never going to work.
No. And my mom actually told me the other day that one of the only fights she ever got, only arguments she ever got into, like with one of her best friends, was over slaw. And, that's just one of those things.
That's one of the cutest things I've ever heard.
Yeah. It was like, Eastern versus Central North Carolina slaw. But we don't need to go into the barbecue discussion. We've had those before on the show.
I have to.
Oh, okay.
Because I think it was yesterday, my boyfriend and I were at the grocery store.
My boyfriend
and I
doesn't work as well.
we were at the grocery store. And, it's summer. It's time to start doing some grilling.
Yeah.
And he made the mistake of saying the phrase, "We need to barbecue."
Ooh.
And I was like,
using it as a verb.
Yeah, I was like, no. I don't know how they do things where you're from, but you're in North Carolina now, and you must never say those words again, because barbecue is something that you eat, not something that you do.
Exactly.
Unless you're, like a weird fetishist. That would be kind of weird.
But the meal that I had last night.
Sorry.
No, I told this to you, and you said I need to repeat it. But the meal that I had last night was you got to choose from 3 different types of meats, and I ordered big because I knew I was going to eat it today. And the one thing that this place is known for, like, they run out of their ribs. Like, you get there early, because if you don't get there early, you don't get their ribs. So I had 1 rib last night, but I knew, like, I'm not a big fan of eating ribs and wings in public, like putting an entire, God, this is just going to sound bad, putting an entire bone in my mouth.
Yeah. It's like making eye contact with somebody when you're eating like a popsicle or a banana.
Yeah.
And you're just like, there's no good way. Yeah. Please look away.
I'm going to be covered with all of this, and I've got a bone in my mouth. Please. So that's kind of the way that went yesterday.
It just happened to be in my latex jumpsuit. It's not weird. Stop looking at me like I'm a piece of meat.
Yes, and I'm going to put the ball gag back in my mouth when I'm done.
Yes,
but
please, sir.
But the name of that meal that I could choose, and I got barbecue chicken, and from the pit style barbecue chicken, not fried chicken, all that shit.
I wish that everybody could see your face when you said pit style.
I bet it comes across.
You snarled your nose up a whole lot.
Well,
pit style.
Pit style. And I didn't want anybody to think that it was like that slathered with sugar sauce barbecue.
No.
And then this is all very detailed to the Appalachian Trail.
Yes.
And then pulled pork and ribs and collard greens and potato salad. And that meal was called the Big Boy. Right. It was,
Big Boy 3 meat.
It was the Big Boy meat combo. and so I had that moment when you're at a restaurant and you're like, like usually it happens when you're at a restaurant that has a foreign language associated with it, and you're kind of like, I'll have the chicken. And they're like, which one? You're like, fuck, I've got to say this out loud, to someone whose native language it is. Mm-hmm. This one was just more of me going, like, I didn't want to tell our African American waiter, like, hey, I'll have the Big Boy meat combo. Like, that just didn't sound quite right. But, first off, I'm saying the word boy. Anyway.
Big boy. Big boy is a really interesting phrase anyhow.
Oh, wow.
Big boy.
Big boy. Hey, I'll have the Big Boy meat combo.
There's no way. I mean, unless you're a mother speaking to like a 2-year-old or a lady of the night, like you just should never use the phrase big boy.
Especially when that costs over $20. Like if you're paying over like I could see the Big Boy meat combo being $7.98.
Maybe Big Man.
Big Man.
The Big Man meat combo.
The Big Boy meat combo for, $20-something. Like that, I shouldn't have to.
Well, the other thing too is like Big Boy is sort of an interesting, like, if you're really that big a boy, you're just a man. Like, call it the man meat. Okay, no, don't call it the man meat combo.
The man meat combo. Oh my God.
Oh boy.
Oh wow.
I said it.
So,
I did not think about that before I said it.
We'll be back in a second to talk about the Appalachian Trail.
Man meat combo.
Man meat combo. Wow. Got it.
I got a massage the other day, and as soon as I laid down, I was like, well, fuck, my stomach is going to growl the entire time, which is really awkward when you're in a 8x8 room with a stranger. And the first, like, big, the massage therapist, like, got really close to my ear and was like, was that you or me? And I was like, stop. Shh. This is a no talking time. Shh.
The worst, well, on top of, I felt it starting to happen when we were interviewing Baltimore Jack, because he and I don't think people realize, like, if you listen to it, and thank you to everybody who listened, that's like it's our second most popular episode now.
Second to?
Trail Days.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, Trail Days.
That's awesome.
And, but there was a moment where it was like, we were the dueling banjos of stomachs. Like Jack's would go and mine would go, and then mine clearly won towards the end. And but it reminded me when I took the SATs for the first time. I was at a different high school in the area, and it was mixed in with some people that I didn't know, but it was like there were a lot of people from my high school there. And that night it was my junior year. That night was our junior prom. And so a little nervous, got the prom coming up kind of thing. And then I'm taking the SATs. I don't do very well in tests. And I got there and it was just like, and it was like the first like 2 or 3 were funny. And then like my stomach was like, oh, I've got an audience. And I mean, we're talking like people on the other side of the room are like looking at me like, okay, dude, we get it. And like,
what are you going to do?
I couldn't do anything. And I'm like, do I have to? I think I was just nervous. Mm-hmm. And then it was like, do I need to fart? It's like they let you go to the bathroom. Like, yeah, they let you go you have like 5 minutes between sections. And it's like, you can only go to the bathroom one at a time.
Right.
And it's like, well, what are the other rooms doing? Are they allowed to let people, like, so there's more than one person in the bathroom at a time.
Right.
And so I got up and went to the bathroom and stood there, and it was just like, nope, nothing, just my stomach going. And I'm standing there in the bathroom, I peed or whatever, and then it was like, nothing, I can't even rip a big one here, to get this. Nope, nothing. It just stopped. And then I sat down. And it wasn't just like a little, like they would go for like seconds. Ooh. You're like, oh God. But so speaking of the Appalachian Trail and that kind of thing and trail days, anything fancy happened to you at Trail Days? Anything notable you can remember?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
I was walking along. And there were this was on Friday night, and there were people in front of me that said, I heard Pox and Puss are gonna be here. Oh, I can't wait. And I was like, what?
Famous.
That is so exciting.
Trail fame.
I wore my Pox and Puss t-shirt on Friday, and somebody came up and was like, where'd you get that shirt? Like, I follow them on Instagram. They're the best. And like, they totally didn't know that I was Puss, and I was just like, yeah, awesome. I like them too. I appreciate that. Yeah,
it was really interesting to find out.
A lot of people are on Instagram.
Yeah, a lot of people followed us on Instagram, but like didn't know we had a podcast.
Right.
There's one guy who's just standing there. I can't remember his name. I think it might be a guy named Aesopopoulos, and I think it was his name. And
good name.
Yeah, it's really cool. And he has a lot of great pictures on Instagram as well. But I was standing there, and there's just like some dude standing behind us while we're setting everything up. And I said, oh, hey, how you doing? Start talking, and then he's like, oh, I didn't realize this. He's like, yeah, no. He's like, are you Pox and Puss? Like, yeah. And he's like, I didn't realize you guys did this. I follow. And I said, oh, well, how'd you know about it? He's like, I follow you guys on Instagram. And we have like 20 pictures on Instagram. Yeah. Meanwhile, the Appalachian Trail Instagram account, I think it literally has 4 pictures on it now. 435 followers.
Whoa.
Completely unsolicited.
You should put some more on there.
Yeah. I mean, shit. Seems like having less works out well now.
Yeah.
It's obviously the Appalachian Trail is what gets people. But So one thing I enjoyed about trail days, besides getting to meet a lot of people and see people in person, like, oh man, I'm trying to think of like people running them down, like people that didn't make it onto the episode. Young lady named Zion. She came by with her cute little daughter.
Yeah.
And she's really cute. And
her little daughter has done like 200 miles of the trail with her.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's cool.
I know. I mean, I'm talking like this is like a 3-year-old, like little bitty.
Yeah, like 3. I mean,
so cute. Like when I was at Mojo's waiting in the long ass line for the bathroom, like this little girl was like completely amusing herself by climbing on and off the couch, like that old, you know, that
this
was
is amazing.
Yeah, like that was the most fun she had all day. Yeah, Zion was awesome.
What?
So I found one journal that I kept on the trail, and like I have a fair amount of like writing that I did while I was on trail, but the back like 3 or 4 or 5 pages are just funny quotes that people said that I wrote down. And I just read one that apparently I was talking about my dog, and I was like, I can't wait until I get home and I can give Journey a bath. and my friend from the UK was like, why would you want to give him a bath? Like, dogs hate baths. And I was like, he loves baths. And he looked at me and said, I love baths. Like, would you give me a bath? I will love a bath.
Big thank you to Elaine Pritchett, who runs Mojo's. And we never really got a chance to talk to people at Sundog because they were always busy, but thank you for letting us use your electricity.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, Mojo's surprised the hell out of me. Like, that's just not a little place you expect to find in Damascus.
Yeah.
Like, it definitely had like a city-fied feel to it, but it was really great. I mean, I enjoyed it, being
they
right outside.
were really, really wonderful for us and to us.
And the sheer amount of people that use that bathroom, it was pretty damn clean the entire day. I was amazed. But no, Elaine was awesome. Let us camp out in front. I mean, let us set up out in front, and then and they stayed open until like 4 or 5 or whatever.
5 o'clock, I think.
And fed everybody and all that kind of thing. And it was just a great place to be. And then you could tell when they were done, they were done. They were ready to be done for the day. But I had a lot. I mean, everybody knows what happened at Trail Days at this point. But I had a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I had a lot of fun seeing people and all that kind of thing.
I have a client that was telling me the other day that she doesn't allow her 16-year-old to watch The Big Bang Theory because it's too it's the material is too adult. And I thought, your kid's gonna get pregnant her freshman year of college. Like, yeah, that's what's gonna happen. I think your child should watch nothing but the Big Bang Theory for a little while to understand that there's more in this world than what you're keeping in the 4 walls of your house.
And Darlene and David are in it.
Yeah, it's my doppelganger.
Yeah, my wife likes Big Bang Theory. I do not.
Yeah.
I do not.
My boyfriend loves it. I could take it or leave it.
Yeah.
I'll watch it if it's on.
I've seen it. Yeah.
I'm not going to change the channel to it, but I'll watch it if it's on.
No, it's definitely one of those, like, hey, you're watching this, I've got the laptop out.
See, and sure. I would think, like, if I had house guests and one of them was 14 years old, I would be like, here, watch this. Like, exactly. I feel really good about turning this on the television. Do not watch, any of the DVR'd Game of Thrones or, whatever. Who knows? I don't even know. I don't want to talk about kids anymore.
Yeah, fuck it. All right. We'll be right back. Use the restroom.
Yeah. Me too.
So, I think it was 2001 or 2002. My dad was getting ready to go hike down into the Grand Canyon, and he had not done much backpacking. We'd gone on day hikes and we'd gone camping, but we never really did much backpacking. And so my dad was just going down into the canyon for 2 days, stay at Ghost Ranch for like 2 nights down there. But you still have to go down yourself and still have to hike out yourself.
Right.
And so he was borrowing a lot of my equipment, and so we just decided that we were going to go on a 2-night hike. And I thought the easiest place for us to get to, and the easiest, most beautiful, most rewarding place around here. Good God, can't stop burping the old. This episode, by the way, brought to you by, what is it?
Bloody Mary.
Oh, well, there was that. But the Second Wind Pale Ale.
Oh yeah,
that's what I started in.
Hilarious.
At 11:40. Some of the most humorous beer can art.
It's the funniest label I've ever seen on a can of beer.
I mean, it does look like it was. First off, it was easily done on Microsoft Paint.
Yeah.
If they're lucky.
It also looks like the name of it should be like Special Ed Ale or something.
Yeah.
Like,
is that first person a woman or a man?
I don't know.
And the second guy looks like he got beat up by the other ones, and the third one's a morph of the other ones. But Mother Earth Brewing, Kinston, North Carolina, Second Wind Pale Ale, if you want to Google that can. But yeah, making me a little bit burpy. Here, let's have another sip.
Yeah.
Ah, warm. But so anyway, my dad and I, we went to Mount Rogers. We went to Carver's Gap. And got to Carver's Gap. Got there a little earlier than we planned, and then the hike from Carver's Gap over to we hiked south on the AT for just a few miles, just past it was like the Humpback Ridge that's there. There's 3, boom, 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 and so we got to our campsite at like 3 in the afternoon. Like, okay, and like just kind of set up the tent kind of thing, and then immediately it started downpouring at like 3:30, 4 o'clock. And it's the summertime, so we had...
Had you already set up your tent?
Yeah, we set up the tent.
That is my favorite. When you are walking along and the weather's good, you get everything set up,
right.
And like as soon as it's set up, it starts raining, and you're like, I'll just go into this house I just set up.
Yeah.
And
boom, yeah.
wait it out. And but like the flip side of that is when you get to camp and you're sort of like, I'm exhausted, I just need to sit for a second, and then it starts raining, and then you're like, son of a bitch, yeah. I have to set everything up in the rain. It just feels like a little game you're playing with God.
Well, yeah, we luckily had it set up, and I can't remember if it started drizzling before or what, but I feel like we finished setting up the tent, and then like a minute later, like boom. So yeah, it was pretty good. Like he was ready to take a nap kind of thing, and it's 4 o'clock. And so there I am, shoulder to shoulder with my dad, laying in this 2-person tent. Just kind of sitting there, not much to do. And so then he takes a nap, and I kind of doze off for a bit. And then, 30, 40 minutes later, wake up, and we're both just kind of sitting there, rain still just beating the outside of the tent. And we started talking about, just chit-chatting about stuff. And then there was like some silence, and my dad says, don't... do me a favor. I'm like, okay. He's like, don't do any hard drugs. And it was like, oh God. And I think at the time I was like 28, and I'm like, so now we're gonna have the drug talk. I am
a grown-up dad.
Yeah, and I'm like, okay, sure thing. Maybe more like 25 or something like that, but still, it's like a little past.
Yeah.
And
you do know that like I'm older than college age now.
Exactly. I'm like, might still be in there, but I'm still older than it. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, because I did some pretty hard drugs one time. And it's like, oh, this is the time Dad tells me about heroin, and it's like, all right, okay. And I was like, really? Okay. And he's like, yeah. He said, I'm not real proud of it, but I did do some hard drugs one time. And okay. And I'm just bracing myself, shoulder to shoulder with my dad. Can't go anywhere. What's he going to tell me about the time he went to Thailand and, and whatever. And he's like, he had kidney stones one time. And before that, he's like, I had some friends that did some bad drugs, did hard drugs, and it just went downhill. They just weren't able to recover. But his hard drug story was about the time he had a kidney stone and they had to give him morphine. And he told me all about how when he took morphine, they had to move him from one room to another, and he was so fucked up that the ceiling was this was a sea of shimmering blue, and the walls were radiating red, just waves of red going down. He's like, and I could hear the most beautiful music in the world. He's going on and on about all this stuff, and it was like the ceiling was like painted blue, the walls were like red wallpaper, and the music he was hearing was the Dr. Johnson, please come, bing. You know, there's crazy noise. Like, it wasn't even music, but he heard the most beautiful music in the world, and he saw these waving, rippling, you know, the ceiling and all this stuff. But those were his hard drug stories, and it was like,
that's adorable.
Whew. And so I know that I had some trapped conversations. Did you ever have any trapped, like in a shelter or in a tent conversations?
I don't know. Let's see. Okay, so I will use the phrase let go of one of the gentleman callers that I hiked with for a while.
A suitor.
Yeah.
Trail suitor.
Yeah. And that was weird. Like, because I kept thinking, like, I need to not hike with this person anymore, at least not in the way that we have been. So how am I going to do that? And what's the best way to do that? Because what I don't want to do is, like, you know, do I do it on trail? No, because then we're still hiking. Like,
right.
We're still going to probably have to stay in the same place for the next couple of days. I want to be able to give them some space. Do I do it in town? I don't know. Like, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
So that was awkward because it had to be, like, the right time. And then, like, I'm one of those people that it's like, if it feels like it needs to happen, I just need to do it.
Right.
Like, you know, I'm never that person that's like I had a best friend one time that told me on, like, December 7th that she was going to break up with her boyfriend on January 15th. And I was like, why that date? And she was like, well, we've already done all of our Christmas shopping and planned all of our, like, family Christmas stuff. And it just feels weird to break up right before the holidays. And she also was like, I don't really want to be alone for the holidays. And I was like, that's the most fucked up thing I've ever heard.
Yeah.
I could not, you know, I couldn't share a house with somebody for an entire month.
Oh, yeah, and sharing. Ugh.
Yeah, I was like, I could not do that for an entire month. Like, that just wouldn't sit with me. So it was that feeling of, like, I really just wanted to tell this guy, like, we need to not hike together.
Yeah.
But I couldn't do it because I really felt like I needed to wait until we were in town so that he had the option of going a different direction, or, like, hanging out in town an extra day, or I hung out in town an extra day, or put some space between us, or whatever. So that was weird.
Yeah, I had some conversations where I think it wasn't really so much the weirdness, like, you know, having to be stuck with your parent talking about the birds and the bees or drug stories, but, like, I definitely had some weird ones where you're kind of like, I don't think that I need to be around this right now, and this is kind of being made. It's kind of the way you feel like if you're around somebody who's on the cell phone and they're having, like, way too intimate of a conversation. You're like, we're on an elevator, fucker. Like, we don't need to talk about this, or whatever it is. I know I had a few of those we talked about before we were recording, that, like, I had, you know, some people that I had hiked with for months and wound up hanging out with both of them individually afterwards. They broke up in, like, Connecticut and Massachusetts, but didn't really let on, and then finished together because it was like, well, you know, here's my one shot to do this. We bought gear together. You know, they even bought a dog together beforehand. The dog was doing the trail with them. And yeah, and then, like, put it this way, we even stayed, Barf and I stayed in the same shelter as them at Katahdin Springs Campground before we went up and summited the next day. Didn't even know. Didn't even find out until afterwards. And it was like, oh, man. So I couldn't imagine that, like, having to stick around with somebody after you'd broken up.
I can't imagine summiting with somebody that you had broken up with.
Yeah.
Like, like I summited with a really good friend, and we took a million pictures together at the top of Katahdin, and it was this like, oh my God, what a celebration, what an accomplishment, what an achievement, like this is so exciting. And to share that with somebody that you're like, here, take my picture, and then I'll take your picture.
Yeah.
We'll take turns taking each other's picture. And
or like in our case where there's 30 people on top of Katahdin because they've been closed for 3 days, and none of those people know.
Yeah.
Or some people knew, but we didn't. A majority of them wasn't like they made an announcement or something like
Right.
that. And then everybody else like, hey, you two get together. I want to get a picture of you two. And then having hey, hi, yeah.
We don't really want that.
Yeah,
we don't need that.
That happened a few times from what I understand from hearing from them later on. Like, oh, I couldn't imagine that. I couldn't. Yeah, having to have that relationship with someone, and then, well, okay, well, have a good one. Let's see.
That's hiking with a significant other, like it almost ranks up there with like sailing around the world with a boyfriend or girlfriend,
Yeah.
and then breaking up part of the way through. It's like you're on a boat, like
Yeah.
you can't go anywhere. We might not be together any longer, but we can't really do a goddamn thing about it. Like,
Yeah. That's a good point.
unless you want to quit.
Yeah.
Like, which you probably don't.
Right.
So now what? I told you the story about when I was on trail, there were two girls, and they were like best friends, like lifelong best friends. I think they were.
Oh, right.
They
yeah.
like met in high school or something like that. This is one of those things they had been talking about like forever, that they really, really, really wanted to do. And so they bought, I think that they had all gear separate except for a tent. They shared an MSR Hubba-Hubba.
Mm-hmm.
And really early on, I mean, I think like by the Smokies, one of the girls had a trail romance. And it was not very long after that trail romance sparked that the girl, the boy that she had, had started this trail romance with, had an MSR Hubba.
Right.
And at one point, there was this really awkward conversation of like the girl that was seeing this guy like awkwardly going to her friend and saying, so will you sleep in the Hubba tonight, and me and this guy will sleep in the Hubba-Hubba tonight?
Hubba-Hubba.
Yeah, and it was this like really awkward, that was like a nightly conversation for a week, and then all of a sudden this like lifelong friendship just totally imploded, and that girl took the Hubba, packed up her shit, and was like, you fuckers do whatever it is you want to do.
God.
I'm gonna try and thru-hike the AT. And it was just this like, ooh, that's weird.
Would you imagine that there had to be at least one night where the scorned was just like, Hubba-Hubba, huh? Like it's just such a fitting fucking name for a tent to be left
go,
like, I guess I'm just going to be in the Hubba.
I'm gonna Hubba on my own, I guess.
Meanwhile, the two people fucking are in the Hubba-Hubba.
Oh, man. It would have been even better if the three-man was called the Hubba-Hubba-Hubba. But because it's called the Mother-Hubba, that's a little weirder.
The Mother Scrugga.
Oh, man. Yeah, but can you imagine, like, and then on top of that, it's like, hiking the AT with a significant other that you've broken up with is like sailing in a boat with somebody you've broken up with.
Yeah.
Being the third wheel on the Appalachian Trail would be like being the third wheel on a boat. Like, I can only imagine. I'm trying to envision hiking with a really good friend.
Yeah.
And her saying, like, would you mind sleeping in the Hubba tonight? And being like, no, I want to sleep with you in the Hubba-Hubba. And all of a sudden, it's like you turn into a 4-year-old, and you're just like, I don't want to sleep in the Hubba. Yeah.
Sleeping between them with your arms crossed?
No, I don't want to sleep in the Hubba. I don't want to sleep alone. I want you. I want to sleep with you. And it's this weird, like, this is not what I signed up for, but I feel like a child for saying so.
No.
Exactly. This is not what we talked about over spring break. Yeah.
I can't think of anywhere to go.
So you got trapped in a tent to talk about quote unquote hard drugs. That reminds me of like my mother. When my mother talks about drugs, she always talks about how she's very proud of the fact that she's never smoked any drugs. Yeah. Which I can't. My brother and I have talked about, like, is this her adorable way of saying she's never done drugs, or is this her super sneaky, like, she was a sorority girl in the 70s, is this her super sneaky way of saying that, like, she did coke,
she never
smoked weed? Like we can't really tell, but it's up there with, like, don't do any hard drugs.
Yeah.
I never smoked any drugs, and it's what exactly are you talking about here? Are we talking about the same thing?
Yeah, because my dad, my dad literally couldn't go to Woodstock because he was in his last semester of college, and during Woodstock he had like finals. He's like, ugh. And I think finals were like the week after Woodstock, but he needed this, like, he had been asked by several people, like, we were going to this concert.
Yeah.
And he was like, I've really got to study. And he's like me. It took him a while to get through college. Not nearly as long as it took me. But, he kind of was like, I kind of need to get out of college. And so, like, he's telling me hard drugs, and I'm like, what is he about to tell me? Is he about to tell me about the opium den? Like, what's he about to tell me? And,
Yeah.
But
the time he shot heroin into his eyeball.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, the time he snorted ants with Motley Crue.
Yeah.
But I don't want to, again, this was a sad one already, talking about trail days and that kind of thing. But my dad, we talked about last week. It was like, okay, we're going to take a week off, just take a week. More just because you and I had a hell of a May.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. We did the end of April / beginning of May was Baltimore Jack. Yeah. And then we had 2 amazing Baltimore Jack episodes out of that. In the middle of the second Baltimore Jack one, we were recording the Johnny Swank episode, which is here in Raleigh, and which was, like 4.5 hours of recording.
I mean, we had a good time.
We were slotted for 2 hours, and it was 4 hours.
Yeah.
And then the following week was Trail Days, which was just, draining as hell. And then that episode came out, and I was like, let's just take a break. And so the day that the Appalachian Trail, the day that the Trail Days episode came out, my father passed away that night. And so that was a lot to take in. So it was just perfect that this past week we had off. And but I was thinking about, what am I going to say this week about that? And I just think that a couple of things. One, that the story about my dad and I being stuck in the tent, that was like one of the only times we went backpacking together. And by the way, my dad successfully went up and out of the Grand Canyon a few weeks later. Great story about that. So my dad was in Arizona. He was in Nevada for a conference, and they were like, hey, we've got a few days between when he was supposed to speak and something else. So one of his friends like, let's go do the Grand Canyon. And so they did that. But he literally borrowed my solo 520s and 535s, and he wore them down. The morning they woke up, 6 inches of snow fell into their room, in their hotel room. When they woke up, in Arizona, right at the entrance to the southern part of the Grand Canyon. Have you ever been there? Grand Canyon?
Never been to the desert.
The Grand Canyon,
except for Las Vegas, which doesn't count.
Even as touristy as, it's made out to. Hello, Jordan. As touristy as it's made out to be, I remember my girlfriend at the time, now my wife, we pulled into the parking lot, and you can see through the trees. You're like, that looks very. No. There's no way that that's what I'm seeing right now. Let me park and then look at it, because there's all these trees right in the parking lot. And I just remember walking out, like stepping over a fence that's like, don't go over this, and stepping out on the fence and walking right out into this rock that jut out into the middle of it. Like, what the fuck am I looking at? Because the Grand Canyon is just, there's just really no way to describe it until you see it. And so my dad did that. It was very successful in it. Like I said, he was waist deep in the snow on the way down. We're down there for 2 days, and then by the time they came back up, the snow melted. And so they
Ooh.
were walking in like knee deep mud
Yeah.
and donkey shit, you know,
Yeah.
because, you know, and so on their way back up, you know, they did all that. And so then my dad had like 3 days of a conference in Vegas. And so he just grabbed a plastic bag and wrapped my hiking boots into this plastic bag. And then I asked him, I was like, hey, what happened to my boots? And working for an outfitter, I had a few pairs of boots. I wasn't too worried
Right.
about it, but those were broken in just right.
Right.
And he's like, oh, I think I might have left them in Vegas. And it was like, all right, that's cool, you know, whatever. Okay, that's fine. I've got another pair. And then a few months later, he's like, no, I found your boots. I found your boots. I've got them. I'm like, oh, awesome. And they were still in the plastic bag. And they were, I'm not even kidding, 3/4 to an inch thick all the way around in Arizona mud and donkey shit. And it just completely dried around these boots. And it was like, well, you know, whatever. I explained it to one of the guys we work with who has been selling boots for decades now. And he's like, I think I can tell you a way to get those taken care of. And sure enough, I'm not even shitting you, like those boots look like they are brand new.
What?
Yes.
Cool.
And it took them off. And all it took, literally, hand lotion.
Huh.
Anything with lanolin in it.
Yeah.
Just boom. It took a while to get them cleaned up, but yeah. So that was one cool thing. And what was the other thing? I had another thing about my dad. The hard drugs. Anyway. So we need to go because Puss's grandparents are in town.
They're crazy.
And
so
they're crazy. And you guys are going to a Durham Bulls game.
yeah. I was trying to
God.
explain. My boyfriend's going. It's his first time ever going to a Durham Bulls game.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And he's like, I'm not really a baseball fan. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. Like, this is minor league. So it's baseball-y enough to feel like you're at a game, but not so much that you feel like you have to watch. Like,
Yeah.
you don't feel like you're watching history take place. So it's
Yeah.
not like you got to watch the whole thing. You
Yeah,
can
and
pretty
half
much...
the people that are on the team probably went to high school right up the street here in Cary High School. Yeah.
I know the entire field maintenance team was in my graduating class. So.
Nice. But, well, cool. Well, let's see. So far today, we've made it through a Bloody Mary and a laptop.
Mm-hmm.
Your boyfriend came in and gave us his laptop to use.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see how we get the information back at some point in time.
My dog wore headphones.
Your dog wore the headphones for a while. Journey. We need some pictures of Journey.
Okay.
Because we've only had cools and scraps so far on
well,
Instagram and that kind
You
of thing.
should Instagram, or
Oh,
you should...
don't worry. He's about as cute as he can be.
No.
And we've made it through all kinds of stuff today. So step one, we're back, and then we'll record next weekend, and maybe we'll have a better plan.
Step 1 is admitting the problem. Step 2 is fixing it.
Step 3 is getting out of your pajamas.
Yeah. Yeah. I need to change out of my pajamas so that I can go have
Oh,
have
all right. Well, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, maybe Pinterest. I think you should just take over the Pinterest account.
Yeah, that's probably smart.
All right. Have a great time, and go Bulls.
Don't call it the man meat combo.
Man.